Hello, we appreciate you taking the time to join us and learn about funding options we have for your community. The city has been working with CivicMic to educate your community about the landscaping and lighting districts. Our main goal is to provide information so you can make informed decisions about the services being provided to your community and the associated funding. In this meeting, we will cover the history of the district and loan option details, as well as an introduction to the survey and ways that you can get involved in your community. This is recorded and shared on civicmic.com/Fairfield, where if that is where you have found us, there is a lot of useful information here about your district. So please look around, learn more about the district. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at 1-800-676-7516 before taking the survey. With that, we'll move into the presentation with a history of the district, loan options, details, and loan option details by Chris Lewis from the city.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Lewis. I'm with the Public Works Department. I've been with the department since early 2020 and really began overseeing the districts later that year. Over the last couple of years, I've spent a lot of time learning the history and operations of the city's 16 landscaping and lighting maintenance districts. And I think I came at a very pivotal time because we have an opportunity to make some really big changes and really big decisions in these districts, and I look forward to it. So we do have a lot of information for you, but please don't hesitate to email or call us if you need additional info or have any questions. Next slide. So as Michelle stated, this is what will be covered in today's presentation. Next slide, please. I'd like to start off by giving everyone a brief definition of what a landscaping and lighting or maintenance district, or LLMD, is. An LLMD is a funding mechanism established by local governments in accordance with the 1972 Landscaping and Lighting Act to provide an enhanced level of landscaping and lighting services in a defined geographic area. The majority, if not all, of those services confer a special benefit to a specific community and are therefore funded by that specific community. Now, any portion of those services that confer a special benefit to the public at large is funded by the city itself or some other funding source. While LLMD assessments do appear on your property tax bill, they are not related to your property value or your standard 1% property tax, which goes towards general countywide and citywide services that benefit the entire community, like fire services and police services, parks, libraries, etc. Next slide. The Downtown Business District was formed in July 1991 and roughly encompasses the area between Delaware Street, Pennsylvania Avenue, Kentucky Street, and Jefferson Street and Union Avenue to the east. At the same time the district was formed, Council also approved an automatic annual budget increase that would match the rate of inflation up to 10% in order to mitigate the effects of rising costs over time. This automatic budget inflator allowed for a proportionate increase to the assessment rates during any given fiscal year. However, the passage of Proposition 218 in 1996 caused the city to conduct a balloting process in 1997 that resulted in a major change to the assessment rates. Next slide. To give you more context, in 1996, California passed Proposition 218, which is an amendment to the California Constitution that restricts local governments from establishing new or increasing existing assessments, taxes, and other fees that were established prior to 1996 without property owner or ratepayer approval. While the assessment rates approved in 1991, before Prop 218 was passed, were still valid, the City of Fairfield Resolution number 1997-144 tells us that a balloting process was conducted and new rates for this district was established in 1997. Rather than the previous open-ended annual rate increase of up to 10%, the new assessment rates for each parcel were limited to a specific range designated in resolutions 1997-63 and 1997-144. Assessment amounts are different for each parcel since rates are based on the frontage area, the square footage of each frontage for each property. So please visit the civicmic.com/City of Fairfield website to find specific assessment rate ranges by assessor's parcel numbers. And that brings us to the purpose of the message of today. Staff recently began a comprehensive review of all 16 of the city's LLMDs for the purposes of determining the financial and operational viability of these districts. The downtown business district was identified as requiring an increase in revenue in order to maintain services at the current level during the next couple fiscal years and beyond. Most of the city's LLMDs have managed to sustain services for the last 20 to 30 years using just annual assessments and any available reserves it may have had without requiring an increase to its established maximum assessment rates. But we are at a point now where rising costs have exceeded the revenue we are authorized to collect. So it is time for the community to make some decisions as to the level of service they would like to receive and the assessments they're willing to pay for the next 10 to 20 or 30 years, just depending on however long these districts stay active. Next slide. Now I'll go over the district's budget projections. I'm going to give you a quick explanation of what you're seeing here in this chart. The first row shows the fiscal year, which runs from July 1st to June 30th. The second row shows what the beginning fund balance was, or reserve amount was, for the district on July 1st of each year. We then see the revenues and expenses for the year, and finally the and the market value, excuse me, that is the gain or loss on the city's pooled cash. And the final row is the ending fund balance, which is the reserve amount left on June 30th of each fiscal year. With current projections, this district is projected to deplete its reserve by fiscal year 23-24. You'll notice that in 23-24, the district will have about $1,000 in reserves by the end of that year, which is really not a sufficient operating reserve. You'll also notice that in order to keep that $1,000 in reserve and to make sure the fund doesn't go into a negative balance, the district will have to reduce the budget by about 25% from the previous fiscal year. So from $118,000 in fiscal year 22-23 to about $90,000 in fiscal year 23-24. And the district will have to make another 30% reduction in fiscal year 24-25. These reductions will actually compound over time, since not only is the budget for services decreasing, but the quantity of services will also decrease due to general inflation. So for example, if in 2022, your district receives 4 weed abatement services 4 times per month at the rate of $25 per service, that will equal $100. But by the year 2025, costs for weed abatement services may go up to $30 per service, which means the district can now only afford 3 services per month. Next slide. In order to properly and comprehensively address this issue before we get to the point of needing to consistently reduce services year after year, the city must complete what we are referring to as a Proposition 218 process over the course of fiscal year 22-23. Now, this process includes 2 things. The first thing is a community engagement process, and the second is a Proposition 218 balloting. The community engagement efforts are so crucial to the entire process and will be 2-pronged. The first prong will include an educational approach to make sure that all property owners are aware of the district, the services it offers, and the current situation so they can really make an informed decision at the ballot box. And the second prong will include interactive tools and collaborative work groups, which will be available to all property owners in the district to make sure that everyone can be a part of the decision-making process. We really want to make sure that future services and assessment rates are a reflection of what the entire community wants as a whole. The main purpose of this community engagement is to determine what services the community would like to receive in the future. That could mean an increase or a decrease in services, or it could also just mean that the community wants to keep services as they are. And it's just a matter of us modernizing the assessment rates so that they fit what services actually cost in terms of 2022 dollars, as opposed to what projections were in the 1990s. The results of the community engagement effort and what we hear from property owners is what's going to determine what the district looks like and how much it will cost for the next couple decades. The second effort that the city must undertake is the Proposition 218 analysis and balloting. The Proposition 218 requirements are actually more involved than a simple balloting process. Proposition 218 does not just require that property owners approve a new or increased tax or assessment. It also stipulates that for any proposed increase to assessments, local governments must prove and demonstrate the cost of each service or improvement the district is providing. It also must prove and demonstrate the quantified proportion of special benefit each parcel within the district is receiving from those services and improvements, and the quantified proportion of general benefit those services and improvements provide to the public at large, among several other things. Prop 218 requires that the city prove and demonstrate all these facts in what is referred to as an engineer's report, which is of course prepared by a professional registered engineer. And the city has hired our consultant NBS, which has specific expertise in assessment engineering, to provide this very technical analysis. Next slide. The entire process takes about a year to complete. And this is an approximate timeline of events, and there's quite a few things on here, but I won't read the whole slide, but basically the bulk of the work, which is the collaborative efforts and assessment engineering, will take place between July and December 2022, with ballots being sent to property owners in April 2023 and final approval of rates in June 2023. Next slide. Again, just to reiterate, the ultimate goal of this entire process is to establish new rates and a new scope of services beginning July 1st of 2023. I have the asterisk there because I wanted to note that this is only if the community desires a new assessment rate and a new scope of services. Of course, we'll learn that by going through this process. Next slide. Now we can talk about the cost for this effort. The cost for this work is approximately $80,000. And if you remember from our budget slide, the district does not currently have enough reserve balance to cover this work and to also continue providing landscape services at the current levels. So property owners will have the opportunity to provide their input through an online survey as to how the district moves forward in fiscal year 22-23. Now, the first option is to reduce landscaping services in order to cover the Proposition 218 work. And the second option is to receive a loan from the city's general fund to cover the projected $40,000 shortfall, which will allow us to maintain the current level of service and do the Prop 218 work. Next slide. If the first option is chosen, then your assessment rates will remain the same in fiscal year 22-23. However, the district will see a pretty dramatic reduction in services during the fiscal year. We estimate an overall 55% reduction in services over the course of 22-23, beginning in September. Next slide. With option 2, property owners could opt for a $40,000 loan from the general fund to maintain landscaping services at the current levels during fiscal year 22-23 and complete the Proposition 218 work. If option 2 is selected, then your assessment rates and landscaping services will remain the same in fiscal year 22-23. Next slide. City Council has agreed to issue the loan at 0% interest for a term of 5 years. The annual loan payment will be proportionately allocated among all accessible parcels based on the current proportion of your assessment rate. So please visit civicmic.com/City of Fairfield to find your specific projected loan payment amount. Next slide. Now I mentioned a couple slides back that property owners will have 2 options at the moment. Option 1 is to reject the general fund loan, and option 2 is to receive the general fund loan. Each of those options have 2 potential outcomes. So in other words, there are 2 options available that could potentially lead to any one of 4 outcomes. There is quite a bit on this slide, and because it is so important, and this is really the crux of this meeting, I'm going to go ahead and read through this slide and explain what you're looking at. So we'll start with the first row. If option 1 is selected, this first row talks about option 1, outcome 1. So option 1, again, is that the loan is not issued. And in this particular scenario, new assessments are not approved. So that means that over the next year, property owners have went through the process and decided that they are not interested in raising their rates, and they are comfortable with whatever services they can receive with the current assessment rates. Effect on services in this case would be that services would be reduced over time to match whatever revenue is available during any given fiscal year. In fiscal year 22-23, you'll see that your rates will stay the same. You'll still pay the current assessment rates that you're paying at the moment. And in fiscal year 23-24 and beyond, you'll keep paying those same current assessment rates. In the second row, we have option 1 and outcome 2. So in this scenario, the loan is also not issued. And except in this scenario, we've gone through the Prop 218 process, and property owners have decided that they are willing to approve new assessment rates because they'd like to receive either new and enhanced services or continue receiving the same services they're receiving. They're willing to pay a little bit more for that option. The effect on services in this scenario is that in fiscal year 22-23, services will be reduced to match the revenue that we're receiving at the moment, because remember, the loan is not issued in order to supplement the assessment revenue. But in fiscal year 23-24 and beyond, the district will receive whatever new and enhanced services that the property owners have approved through the Proposition 218 process. In fiscal year 22-23, you'll continue to pay your current assessment rates, whatever you're paying right now. And in fiscal year 23-24 and beyond, you'll pay the new assessment rates, whatever was approved during that Prop 218 process. In the third row, we have option 2 and outcome 1. Option 2, again, is that the loan is approved through this property owner survey. In this situation, the loan is issued and property owners have approved new assessment rates and new services during this Proposition 218 process. The effect on services in this situation is that during fiscal year 22-23, there will be no changes to landscape services that you're currently receiving right now, because we do have that loan to supplement your assessment revenue. So there's no need to reduce any services in fiscal year 22-23. And in fiscal year 23-24 and beyond, you'll receive the new and enhanced services, whatever was approved by property owners during the Prop 218 process. In fiscal year 22-23, you'll continue paying your current assessment rates, whatever you're paying right now. But in fiscal year 23-24 through fiscal year 27-28, which would be that 5-year loan repayment period, you'll pay the loan payment amount plus whatever new assessments were approved during the Prop 218 process. And now the final option is option 2, outcome 2. This one is a little more tricky, so I do want to spend a little more time on this particular scenario. So in this scenario, the loan is issued and approved through that property owner survey. However, after the year-long Prop 218 process, we learned from property owners that they are not willing to increase assessments. So in other words, new assessments are not approved. In this situation, during fiscal year 22-23, there will be no changes to the current landscape services you're receiving right now because there's that loan to supplement your assessment rates. However, in fiscal year 23-24 and beyond, services will be reduced to over time to match whatever revenue is available for those services. In fiscal year 22-23, you'll again keep paying whatever current assessments you're paying right now. And in fiscal year 23-24 through fiscal year 27-28, which is that loan repayment period, not that you will pay the loan payment plus your current assessments, it's just that a portion of whatever you're currently paying will go towards the loan and a portion will go towards the current assessment rate. So your current assessments will be allocated to 2 different buckets. And I want to kind of elaborate on this a little bit. If we can go to the next slide, just because this is a little tricky, so I want to give you an example. That top portion there, that chart is just a copy and paste of what you saw on the previous slide. And in the example towards the bottom, you'll see that your current assessment rates, this is an example for you to, we can apply this to your particular assessment rates. If your current assessment is $100 and a loan is issued with a $25 annual repayment period, annual repayment for 5 years beginning in fiscal year 23-24, and the new assessment is not approved, you'll see that your assessment for the next 5 years or during that loan repayment period is still going to remain at that $100 rate, except $75 of your $100 assessment will go towards actual services, while $25 will go towards the loan payment. So there will be less of your dollars going towards services. If this outcome comes to pass, then you will see an even greater reduction in services during the loan repayment period, because again, not only will less of your assessment be going towards services, but the cost of services are likely to increase, reducing your spending power essentially. If you remember from the example of weed abatement costs I gave earlier, where the cost went up from $25 to $30 per occurrence, in that scenario, you received, as opposed to receiving 4 services, you were only receiving 3 services for that same $100. So this is just a little example to help explain this outcome. I just wanted to make sure I covered this one in detail because it can be a little tricky. And I just wanted to make sure that I also stress the point that you, in this outcome, you will not be increasing your assessment rates. Rather, less of your dollars will be going towards services. Next slide. And this concludes my presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to NBS to talk about how you can get involved. Thank you.
Great. Next steps and how to get involved. There are 3 main ways to get involved with different capacities and different time commitments. Go ahead to the next slide. The first one is to visit civicmic.com/Fairfield. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We recommend that you look through the website, read up on the information on your district. If you sign up for updates or take the survey, we will keep you informed through email, your email address, any updates that we have about the district. We also recommend you bookmark the page so you can find it easily in the future. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So the second thing you can do is take the survey. And go ahead and go to the next slide. Please find your community survey. There are different districts, so please find the one that says 12, the one that correlates to your district. This is the best way for the city to know what services you would like and determine if your community would like the loan to temporarily continue services. That's exactly what Chris was speaking about earlier. So those decisions will partially be determined based off of the survey results that are received. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So the last thing is to join the working group. If you would like to join the working group, please email me at margrich@civicmic.com. It is on the screen. It is margrich@civicmic.com. So the working group will really be there to help the community be informed. They will, in different capacities, walk neighborhoods, get their neighbors information that they may not have, and really just be advocates for the wants of your community. Go ahead and go to the next slide. If you have any additional questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us at, again, the number 1-800-676-7516, or go ahead and email me or by mail at 32605 Temecula Parkway, Suite 100, Temecula, California, 92592. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out with us and be sure to take the survey. All right, thank you.